Hello and welcome to another video on Flared2. This time we are using Blender 4.2.3 to test the new version. So in our scene, let's duplicate the light. This is something I've been asked about on YouTube. Currently, we don't have a system that allows you to add a flare to a collection of objects. Unfortunately, we tried, but it wasn't stable. However, we can add a flare to a selected group of objects, like the ones that we have here. Now, it's important to note that you can't add a flare to a camera. If the camera is selected, you will encounter an error. Select the preset you'd like to use. Let's pick a simple one and press the plus button. As you can see, we've got the spinning blue wheel. There are many functions and operations happening in Python when adding multiple flares. So, when adding a certain number of flares, Blender might pause for a few seconds. Don't worry, it's just processing the required calculations. Now we can see our flares. Let's remove the overlays for a cleaner view. The issue is that all the flares are the same size, which makes it a bit difficult to get a sense of depth. In reality, flares should change size based on distance. The farther away they are, the smaller they should appear. We've already seen that linking them creates a connection between the flares. So it doesn't matter which one you modify, the one you adjust will pass the instructions to all the others. Now I'll select one at random, disable the 2D functions and update. Once I click this icon, all the other flares will adopt the changes made in the global panel, which ends here. This is the global panel. I make the adjustment and now the flare responds to size and distance. We can decide to make them a bit larger. That works fine. I can increase the flare scale, and as you can see, after clicking the update button, all flares are adjusting their size accordingly. As you can see, the first few flares produce ghosts, but the last ones don't because there's a distance function at work. Specifically, this one, the global phase distance. Currently, this distance is set to 12 Blender units. When we reduce it, depending on how the flare is designed, certain element will fade out sooner. If it's set to 8, if I set it to 8 and update all the flares to this value, we'll notice the difference. However, I didn't pick the best flare for this demonstration because this one has fewer elements. Let's switch to another. By selecting flares like this, I can change the preset. Let's pick a more complex one with additional elements. When I click Add Flare, it asks if I want to replace the existing flares with a new preset. I confirm, and as you saw, the controls are much simpler this time because Python only runs the necessary checks once per session. Again, we have a flare with 2D mode active because everything resets to the default values of these presets. Let's disable 2D mode and update all the flares as we did before. Now, as I mentioned, this flare is more complex and generates a range of effects that are noticeable in space. As you can see, each flare is generating a lot of details. We have this series of effects that almost resemble fractals. In reality, they are the ghosts coming from the flares we have viewed here. Most likely, the first 5 are generating ghosts. As I said, this distance, if we reduce it from 12 to 8 and update all the flares, will decrease the number of active elements. Let's lower it to now. You'll notice fewer elements remain active and fewer elements are being counted based on distance. For example, the last 4 flares no longer have the horizontal streak. Let's take a closer look. They've lost it. It's gradually fade out as the distance increases. The first elements to disappear are ghosts and dirt effects, followed by the streak, the glow, and lastly the sunbeams and starburst. as we've actually calculated based on natural behavior. This is a decision we made, and we programmed the system to function this way. However, this doesn't mean that with your suggestions we can't make improvement or adjustments, so feel free to share any feedback you have, because as always, we are eager to enhance Flared2 according to your input. I further reduced the global fade distance, updated everything, and as you can see, only the first and second flares are still projecting elements, while the others no longer active. This also lightens the load of the GPU and reduces the numbers of graphics calculation being processed. As you can see, everything runs smoothly and efficiently. We've put a lot of work into this direction to create highly immersive effects. Now, let's try something different. Let's delete 10 flares and keep just one. I have the selected flares here, and I can simply go ahead and click Delete Selected Flare. It will delete all selected flares, leaving only the first one. Here, too, we have a series of Python controls in place to ensure no orphaned materials or elements are left behind in the scene, which may take a moment, but ensures everything is handled cleanly. Now, I want to adjust global fade distance again. This time, I'm working only on the visible flare, and I want to point out the details related to the dirt texture. We have dirt texture that works within the ghosts and other flare element we've chosen to activate. We can control the intensity of this dirt. This is the maximum and this is the minimum. It's not easy to see, but if I zoom in like this, it's more noticeable. We can also adjust the scale. As you can see, they move in opposite direction because each element has the dirt mapped individually to create more natural look. Maybe it's a bit too intense right now, so it's better to keep it softer, but this element adds a greater sense of realism. We also have another effect within the dirt category. Let's push it to the max. The dirt leaks. This, you can probably see it. Yes, you can. Let's turn off all other dirt effects and leave just this one, which works independently. You see these spots here? These light spots are created by dirt leaks. Basically, when the light is tangential to our position, it creates these marks, and you can see them here, though same are outside the camera view. It all depends on how the scene is set up. We also have this final light burst that, when it enters, create more spots on the lens, which are reflections caused by the dirt leaks, nothing more. Let's go back to the previous states. Sorry if I'm doing a bit of undoing here, but I want to see how well the undo function works. Let's see if it brings back 10 flares I had before. Who knows? Undo a bit more. Let's see what happens. I can hear the fan spinning as it calculates. Perfect. We are back to having all the flares visible again, which is what I wanted. The scene is heavier now, of course. Remember, we have this super cube down here, the famous and fantastic cube. Sorry, I just need to navigate the camera a bit. The cube isn't in a collection yet. Let me go up, press the M key and create a new collection. It's named Collection 13, which works fine. Now the cube is inside this collection. I select any flare, since they are all linked, and tell it to use Collection 13 as the source for obstacle occlusions, meaning that I will use the objects from the collection to occlude the flare we're currently seeing. Let's increase this distance so it's more visible. Now that I have assigned Collection 14 to all the flares, when I update this panel, the flares update accordingly. So, no matter which flare I select, I'll always find Collection 14 set for obstacle occlusion. Now, let's look at the scene from above. Let's turn on the overlays. OK. The cube is between the camera and the flares. Let's return to the camera view, grab the cube and move it towards the flare to see what happens. Alright, it's above. It's inside. Here we are inside the light. Wait. As you can see, the cube is currently making the flare disappear. I can move the cube over the flares and they gradually vanish. Here too, we have values that can be assigned to each individual flare. These two values are start distance of fade when occluded and phase slow down when blah blah blah. These are the parameters we modify. You'll find a more detailed explanation in the user manual. They help us control the intensity, speed and distance at which the flare starts to fade. This works with the cube, but also you may have seen in a previous video, it works with more complex shapes. For example, I'm going to delete the cube now and add Suzanne. I place her here and I move her into collection 13, which we're already using. Hey Suzanne, I'm not sure where you are. How? There you are. Let's see where you are in relation to the rest of the scene. Okay, perfect. We'll bring her over here and take a look. Here she is, and she's doing the same things the cube was doing. Suzanne has more complex shapes with more concavities and details, but the algorithm handles it very well, as you can see. Of course, this is all calculated in real time, whether we're moving the object or the light. Let's give Suzanne a material with a bit of light inside to make it more visible. As you can see, when you move the light, the same thing happens and everything is automated, governed by these two simple settings we've implemented. We've put a lot of effort into this feature. There's still one thing we'd like to improve, but we haven't quite perfected it yet. It's related to distance. The values need different parameters depending on how far away the object is. The farther the object is, the more we need to compensate with these values for what happens when occluded. So, the light you see over there fades out a bit sooner than the one here, which fades later. In reality, this disappears at the same point, but it's more noticeable at a distance because we're starting with a smaller light source. We're still working on this, but we already have a tool that's fantastic compared to what we have used to. It does everything automatically. That's all for this video. I hope to make more videos, perhaps using real scenes, so you can see how the features I'm showing you integrate into well-made scene. Thanks everyone, and remember, Flared2 is on sale until November 6th, because on November 7th it will be released at full price. If you buy it now on the market, you get a 15% discount. You can start using Flare XT right away, which is the current version of Flared, part of version 1. And on November 7th, you have access to Flared2. If you have any question, feel free to reach out through the website or Blender Market. Links are in the description. Thank you and happy creating. Bye!